Dale Carter's America with a very special guest, and by way of full disclosure, a very good friend of mine who is running for Congress, 4th District in Missouri, Mark Alford.
Hey, Dale, how are you?
Excellent.
Good to see you. Good to shake hands again.
No doubt about that.
No mask, shaking hands.
Isn't that great?
I just left the post office. I was going to mail some things down here in Westport to my mom for her birthday, and the lady was scolding me. You got to have a mask on. I said, I threw away my mask. I'm in the 4th District. We don't wear masks down there.
Yeah. Well, this jumps way ahead, but we're seeing that even blue states like Connecticut and New Jersey, they're backing off the mask mandate.
Yep.
The Biden administration's still very much in it. They're saying
of course. They want the control.
Yeah, exactly. And all the way down to Kansas City, Missouri. You know, we call him the Pharaoh, Quentin Lucas I of Kansas City. He's still holding school kids hostage with masks.
Yeah.
What do you think of all that?
I think the American public is catching on. There was mixed messages from the very beginning. Fauci saying 2 years ago that, you don't need a mask. They wanted to protect the N95. They didn't want to rush on the N95 mask. And I said all along, I was questioning people on the air. What do you mean that cloth masks? They don't do any. How could they do any good? You got to wear them. Then they went from 1 mask to 2 masks, double mask. And now they finally figured out the masks are like 5% effective unless you wear an N95 mask. I think they do provide some protection, but not enough to offset the emotional and sometimes physical challenges they present, especially our young people who have gone 2 years now growing up in school, trying to have interactions like we're having right now face-to-face, and missing out on 2 years for what? They are not highly susceptible to this. If they're not already have a comorbidity or some predisposition to disease, the scientists say it's not a big deal. But we've made it a big deal because I believe that the Democrats and the woke political agenda want to have control over us. And they've succeeded because we've let them.
We talk a lot about hypocrisy on our podcast here. And in the last 24 hours, masks for thee, but not for me.
Oh, yeah.
We've seen Stacey Abrams plunk down in front of a whole group of school kids, all of them masks,
right?
And she's not masked. President Obama in front of a bunch of Secret Service guys and workers, he wasn't masked. They all were masked. And then my favorite is Eric Garcetti, the mayor of L.A., who says basically he was holding his breath during a picture with Magic Johnson.
One excuse after another. The governor of California, how many times has he been busted? Nancy Pelosi busted.
Yeah.
They know, and we saw it early on. I forgot what politician it was, but this was in maybe March or April of 2020, where they caught people on the mic saying, well, let's just put it on to be a good show.
Yeah.
It's been a show.
Yeah, it's all theater.
And you remember the story of the Emperor Had No Clothes. Do you remember that Grimm's fairy tale? Mm-hmm. I encourage your listeners and viewers to go back and read that. My dad read that to us as a kid because it's really a story about standing up for what's true and not giving in to authority just because they are in authority. You need to question things and make sure that they are right and true and honorable and noble. And the people who question the king, who was parading down the street naked, and finally 2 people said, hey, you don't have any clothes on. But everyone else was scared to say that.
Right.
We need to quit living in fear, and we need to start logically thinking about life and calling people out when it doesn't make sense.
Well, in President Biden's case, he might not have any clothes on because I understand that's what he likes to do. He did it at the vice president's place, right? He'd walk through the place, swimming naked in the pool.
Okay, well, I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole.
Well, let's rewind the tape all the way to the beginning. You've been an anchor on Fox 4 for many, many
23 years.
Yeah. And you and I used to exchange text messages while I'm doing my morning show, you're doing yours. And I loved it when we had a TV that worked in the studio, which we don't have right now. I would look up to see you looking at a text, and you'd kind of laugh. And I was hoping that I made you laugh there a little bit before you went on the air.
I needed some laugh.
And you were the guy who turned me on to Corn Pop. I had no idea about that.
He's a bad dude.
He is a bad dude. And we've had a lot of fun with that. So why, after all those years of being on the air with news and all that, why a run for Congress?
I knew that I wanted to be a TV anchor since I was in 5th grade, which was a blessing and a curse at the same time because I was so focused and directionalized into my passion and purpose for life that I totally discounted everything else. That, I had an interest in politics. My uncle was a big-time TV anchor in Oklahoma City, kind of like the Larry Moore, Phil wit of Oklahoma City. And I kind of followed in his footsteps, admired him and what he had to offer in his life and how he was able to inform and entertain. And I've always been a ham at heart, so I figured, well, this is a good fit. And so in 5th grade, I started working towards this goal of being a journalist, TV anchor. And so I went to school, went to University of Texas at Austin, studied government Latin American affairs, but I also worked in the Capitol and hung around politicos. I had a strong interest in covering politics. When I got out, I covered the state capitol in Texas, covered Governor Ann Richards in her tenure there, and later Governor Bush, who later became President Bush. And so I always had a real affinity and just interest in politics. But I always thought, you can never go into politics. You don't know how to lie, and you don't have any money. Well, I finally figured out you don't have to have your own money. A lot of it is about raising money because people believe not just in you, but your cause. And I'll get to that in just a second. But you also don't have to lie. I think it's a misnomer that politicians are all about lying. Now, they're going to say things to get votes, and I try to never do that. I try to say exactly how I feel, even though some political consultants will tell you, oh, you don't need to say that. I think we're missing that in America, truth and honesty. Put it out on the table no matter what you believe. There's a reason you believe it. Stick to that. And hopefully you can win people over by doing exactly what we're doing now, Dale, and that's listening, reflecting, and then responding. We have lost that art. I call it the Dale Carnegie. I don't know if you ever read that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Absolutely.
One of the greatest books ever written. We have lost the art of listening in America. And we totally discount people based on our preconceived notions of what they believe and why they believe them. We need to reach some understanding. Now, don't get me wrong. This does not mean wavering from what you believe. I do not believe once you believe something and you have firm set of facts to back you up, do not waver. I don't waver on abortion. I don't waver on the Second Amendment. But I do listen to people because you are not going to win someone over to your way of thinking and influence them in a positive way until they know how much you care. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Absolutely. You know, we have a big election coming up, and I have predicted all along this is going to be a red tsunami. You're running in the 4th in Missouri, which is a Republican seat right now, so that would not be a change if you won. You talk about shutting off your mind and not listening, and sometimes I think when we talk about Democrats and Republicans, it's the red jerseys and the blue jerseys, and if I'm wearing a red jersey, the blue folks aren't going to listen to me, blue jersey, vice versa. I think we've got to get beyond that. We started this podcast about a year ago, and we started by laying out the Constitution. The first few episodes are laying out the Constitution. Here's what the federal government is supposed to do versus what it does now, which is just unbelievable. We're at $30 trillion in debt right now. Let's say
that's scary.
It is scary, and it's going up. And President Biden wants to spend trillions more to add to that.
Of course.
I don't know how we're ever going to pay it off. I don't think we are. But this goes back to Republicans and Democrats. You can go back to a point where the debt was coming down after World War II, and then it started going up under Republicans and Democrats. This is a bipartisan issue. I mean, how do we get around that? How do we get that number going back the other way?
We need to move back to a balanced budget mindset and a balanced budget amendment and start living within our means. No new taxes. We don't need any new taxes. We need to bring our spending under control. It is a dangerous territory that we're in, and we're going to see interest rates go up even further, possibly into hyperinflation. And if we don't get it under control and don't stop spending what we don't have, our children and grandchildren are going to pay the price for it. I remember the high inflation rates that we had under President Reagan. You remember kids, if you're watching now, and I say kids, if you're in your 20s and 30s. Kurt, I'm a realtor also, and so I deal with these first-time home buyers,
right?
Double income, young kids buying $400,000 houses and getting a 3 to 4% loan. My parents paid well over 13% to buy a house, and it really excluded people from the housing market. The American dream, as we know it, is shifting rapidly to where people are getting more into the renter mindset. The Democrats love that because density in housing, if you get a bunch of apartments built and people want to live there, then it's a lot easier to harvest those ballots once that becomes legal. And I think that's the move that you start seeing now in the way that they call this the Voter Rights Act and trying to improve voter rights. It's not about voter rights. It's about changing the way we vote so they can have more people in the Democrat field, more voters that will get Democrats elected.
More people who are counting on a government check.
Oh, yeah.
It's the old difference between Republicans and Democrats, but unfortunately, when Republicans have had the majority, they've spent as well. Kurt and I talk about this all the time. It's like, Democrats spend a lot, Republicans spend somewhat, right? The destination is the same. We're going off the same cliff. It's like the Republicans are doing it at the speed limit and the Democrats are doing it at hyperspeed. I think we've got to change that mindset, get back to what the Constitution says. This is what the federal government does. It's become a multi-headed hydra. Mm-hmm. And you know how this thing works. Once you get a government program going, it never goes away.
Right.
It just keeps getting funded. And then they add more programs and more programs. I mean, if Bernie were running the show, you'd be at $6 to $10 trillion you'd add.
Well, there's so much in this Build Back Better bill that's a bust now, thank God. That was exactly like that. Social programs that were going to not necessarily lift people up to a position where they can make it on their own, which I think that's what government programs should be about. We should have the compassion to help people who are down and out through some misfortune or sickness. But it's not the government's role to permanently suspend someone in this animation level to where they're permanently dependent on others. That's not how God created us.
Right.
God created us, the whole world, inspiration, the word is about, it's a Latin word about God's breath within us, inspiring us. Inspiration is God's breath within us. He created us to be creative. He created us to be productive and make things, whether it's radio or former TV anchor or art. Everywhere in your job, you have a purpose and passion that's going to complete your mission that God has for you. And if we take that away, if we strip that away by over-subsidizing people and over-giving them without expecting anything in return, then we've done them a great disservice. I think it's almost a sin to do that because we are stripping away mankind's humanity. A good example of that is our acceptance of illegal aliens across the border that are coming. It's really an invasion now of our country, the way it's set up. We need to finish the wall. We need to only allow legal people in legally, and those who are not here illegally need to be deported. We need to do it the right way, get in line, and stop giving away things to people who are illegal so that they will vote for you as a Democrat.
There's a way around that we're not doing right now. We're not punishing employers. I mean, that's the way to get to this. And I don't. It's been so long since I've gone to a new job. I came to KFKF 27 years ago. But when I came here 27 years ago,
Right.
You had to fill out an I-9. You had to prove that you were who you said you were and you were in the country legally. Do we not do that anymore?
I think to some level it is. I don't know. I've got a couple of friends who have businesses and some of them in manual labor. And occasionally, I was just talking to one actually last night about this, and they said that, yes, they do check, but the people the illegal aliens have Social Security numbers. That's why I don't like the term undocumented worker. They're not undocumented. They have documents, they're just not their own.
Yeah.
A lot of times. And so they get around these, then they would get busted, but the employer does take precautions because there are fines levied against employers who don't try to verify.
Well, it seems like if you dry up their ability to get a job,
Yeah.
you would dry up their ability to come to this country. Mayorkas is out there saying, that just being in the country illegally is not going to be viewed as a crime anymore, and we're not going to enforce it.
Of course not. Because they want them as voters down the line.
When did they get the option to enforce or not enforce a law? That's we get back to the Constitution. Mm-hmm. The greatest body that we have is Congress. particularly the House, which is what you are running for. That's where things need to be done. The executive branch, which has grown just like every other hydra in the government, is supposed to be to enforce the laws that are passed by Congress.
Well, Attorney General Eric Holder didn't do it. And you've seen in this administration a continued, they even admit to it, the chief of staff for President Biden, run around Congress in all different matters around the Constitution to try to get what they want done. And they figure, well, the courts will stop them down the line, but by then we'll already have things in place. That is no way to operate.
No. Have you talked to other Republicans like Sam Graves, who's been there forever in the 6th District in Missouri, about what might happen in a Republican Congress moving forward after this tsunami is going to go through?
I've talked with several. I haven't talked with Sam.
Because you guys are going to have to pick up the pieces and fix this.
Look, we are going to win the House in 2022, this November.
No doubt.
No doubt. We will win the Senate. I'm confident of that as well. There is so much groundswell movement. People who are in the past have been aligning with the Democrats. I think a lot of union members now are coming on board. Hey, there's a lot of union members out there who believe in the same thing we believe in.
Right.
God, family, guns.
Well, ask the truckers what they think about vaccine mandates.
Exactly. No one wants to be pushed around. And while there's maybe some things that we disagree with unions, I believe there's a lot of good union members out there who are gravitating now towards Republican ideals and will vote Republican in the coming election, the primary. Look at the soccer moms who were so disillusioned and upset because of the mean tweets and the demeanor of President Trump. I would love to have those back now in exchange for what we have now, a feckless, flailing president who I call him the marionette president. Somebody's pulling the strings. I don't know who.
I think his name is Barack Obama.
Barack Obama up here with the strings.
Exactly.
But the soccer moms are coming back. And you know what did that? This tragedy that we saw with the critical race theory and how it was being shoved down the throats of our young people. And no one knew about it until COVID. If anything came out of good of COVID, it was that most children were at home at some point learning off their computers, and parents were looking over their shoulder going, what is this? And we started to have an awakening in America. We don't need to be woke and broke. We need to be stable and able. And I think that instead of being woke, we need to wake up to what's going on. And that's exactly what those parents were able to do, to see that the critical race theory is a bunch of lies, that our founding fathers are heroes and not villains.
I completely agree with you on that. So let's take this fast forward. You win the primary, which is in August.
August 2nd.
And you got some polling on that.
We had a poll that came out 2 weeks ago. There's 42% undecided. I'm in the lead with 21%, and the next person, we have 5 other people in the race so far, is at like 14%. But what I've told my team is, look, we've got a campaign like we're in last place. I have good name recognition in the Kansas City market, but we're going to be in 24, maybe 26 counties by the time.
4th is a big district.
It's huge.
Yeah.
For people who may not know about how this is set up, our founding fathers set up the House of Representatives. Now it's 435 members, and each member represents roughly 780,000 individuals. So it was set up to be the voice of the people, and that's why the 4th district right now is so large. It's spread out. Some counties may have. We were in Lafayette County and Saline County, which are coming back to our district. They were currently represented by Emmanuel Cleaver, which, how do you represent urban Kansas City and farmers in Lafayette County? Well, it's kind of hard to do. They don't get really the representation they deserve. They're coming back into our fold now, hopefully.
Gerrymandering.
Yes, exactly.
We've talked about that on the podcast.
But I think that what's going to happen is the way this map's being drawn now, and they're debating it in the Senate as we speak, it's going to come out where Republicans will have a strong chance of, we're already going to strong for Missouri, but winning back the House. And that's the goal. Whatever it takes. Somebody keep asking me, are you for a 7-1 map or 6-2? I don't care. I'm letting the people in Jeff City work that out.
Yeah.
I'm all about winning the day for our campaign and making sure that Nancy Pelosi and her minions are driven out of power. And I can't wait to see her begrudgingly hand over that gavel to the new Republican Speaker of the House.
That sounds like it's going to be a great day, and if we get the Senate as well. But let's go beyond that. So everyone is sworn in. We've got a new Congress. It's a Republican House, a Republican Senate. You've still got 2 more years of Joe Biden. Now, if you go back in history, when that happened to Bill Clinton, he's a much better politician than Joe Biden is ever going to be. He pivoted, worked with Newt Gingrich, and they did some things together that moved the country forward. He became less of a left-wing tool and more toward the center, which is where he ran, was where Biden ran. Do you think Joe Biden has that ability to work with a Republican speaker?
He may have 20 years ago. This is not the same Joe Biden of 20 years ago.
So what's 2 years of him going to look like with the Republican Congress?
It's still going to be this radical left, which has taken over the Democrat Party. They're going to be pulling the strings. The squad will be louder than ever, and they will not give up the fight. It will make it even more intense. But here's the thing that I'm looking forward to, because I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be on these committees that are going to help investigate things like our debacle in Afghanistan, where we abandoned. I've never seen anything like that. Was one of the reasons I decided to run, by the way. I was on the set reading these, and I was watching these stories and I thought, I've got to do something. This is crazy. This is not the America. We do not abandon our own people. We're going to be investigating that. I think there's going to be an investigation into Hunter Biden, his laptop, and the money that's come in from foreign countries that may have ended up in the big guy's pocket. Those things need to be investigated. There are serious national security issues that need to be investigated. They're not going to be investigated now because the Democrats are still worried about January 6th, looking in the past.
Right.
We need to be looking in the future.
Well, we need to also look at COVID, the origins of COVID.
Exactly.
Where did that come from? Because look at the toll that took in treasure and blood from this country. I mean, we need to look into that and find out how that happened. And I really don't care who's at fault. I think we should dig into that and find out.
I think we ought to do that now. I think we ought to fire Anthony Fauci. I think he has been well-meaning to some degree, but his confusion and changing his story. I know science is not exact in each category, and it does change based on the facts that you change. But to change as much as he has and to come up with new stories and this denying the gain-of-function research and the funding for that, to use semantics as he's arguing with another doctor who the Democrats don't like to call him a doctor, Rand Paul, but he is a medical doctor, and he believes in science just as much as everyone else, and to use semantics to get around this whole gain of function. Look, we all know COVID did not come from some bat in some wet market where they were selling food in China. This market may have been in close proximity to Wuhan, but that lab was the origin. And I think most people know it, and the Chinese know it, and for some reason, we have been protecting the Chinese government in this.
Yeah. Well, I'm an optimist, and in my heart, I think that the folks on the far left, the squad that you mentioned and all that, they are a very small minority, a very loud, small minority. And I feel like America is waking up. I mean, we got the wake-up call. It's like, to your point, the mean tweets of Donald Trump forced, suburban housewives to come over to Joe Biden. Okay, so that happened, and now they've got buyer's remorse, and that's going to be manifest in this election that's coming up this fall. I feel like everybody's waking up. Do you feel that way?
I do. And when I go out to all these places in the 4th Congressional District, it is amazing how much intelligence and common sense there is in people with key overalls and flannel shirts and warm handshakes and cowboy boots with all kinds of stuff on those boots. I think America has had it with the BS in Washington, and they are starting to wake up in record numbers and saying, the emperor has no clothes. This is not right. The wrong people are in control. Bernie Sanders, AOC, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden was used as a Trojan horse. They all filled up what his empty shell was, got him into office, and now they have emerged from this Trojan horse to try to control our nation. And the American people have said, enough is enough. Yeah. We're not going to do it anymore.
Well, we got to get you elected. So I know you got to raise money, and you've been out there doing that. I was on city council in Blue Springs, much smaller level, and I know that is the worst part of running.
Is.
So how can folks help you from Dale Carter's America get some money raised?
Thank you, Dale. Can you contribute, by the way? No, I'm kidding.
Kurt's got all my money.
If you will go to alfordforcongress.com, alfordforcongress.com, we made it very easy. You can do it right on your phone. Now, people are like, well, what are you going to do with this money? I don't see any of this money. It goes directly to a bank account in Ohio that's run by a corporation that is a compliance corporation. We're very buttoned up on our expenditures. In fact, we had a pretty good – I entered the race in the middle of October. So in less than 3 months, we raised more than $200,000 from, I think, 800 different individuals.
That's great.
So people are having confidence in our message. And it's not about me. I want to get that straight. When you're giving to Mark Alford for Congress, you're not giving to Mark Alford. It is about me being the loudest voice for you. And not just for Missouri. You don't have to live in the 4th Congressional District. We're getting money from 11 different states right now, I believe. A lot of people in Kansas, because they realize that people like AOC, who got elected, and Sharice Davids, who got elected here 2 years ago in Kansas, that the money that got them elected wasn't necessarily from the district. It's from people like George Soros.
Right. A lot of it came from outside.
New York, and a lot of it from outside. It's for people who want to support those individuals so that they can be a voice. I'm going to be the loudest, strongest voice for Missouri's 4th Congressional District that Missouri has ever seen. Kind of like what Josh Hawley is doing in the U.S. Senate. I want to take that tack with my experience in the media, my ability to communicate, my ability to get on cable news and be a voice for the people, this rational voice that can bring some clarity and sanity back to Washington. That's what we're missing.
All right. Well, what's your website here? We want to make sure folks can get
alfordforcongress.com.
Alford for F-O-R.
F-O-R Congress.com.
There you go.
So I appreciate it so much.
You bet.
And, we're all in this together, and our country needs healing. And in my speeches, I talk a lot about what's the solution to that. And Dale, I firmly believe that we were founded on Christian principles, and at one time, God was the focal point of our nation. And we had presidents who used to pray in public for our nation. We have lost that. We have lost because I think fear and shame from what the left would do, and the accusations that we're trying to bring about a state religion or confuse the two between government and religion. That's not at all. But we need to put God back in his rightful place in our nation. I think once you remove that, you run into danger. Mm-hmm. And it also leads to more division in our country. I'm not saying everyone needs to run out and believe in Jesus Christ and join a church, although that would be my personal preference because I am a believer in Jesus Christ. But we need to look to God, our Creator, for guidance. In fact, I carry this quote around from Ronald Reagan. Now, this is 40 years ago. One of the greatest presidents, I think, that ever lived.
Greatest in my lifetime.
Ronald Reagan said, "To preserve our blessed land, we must look to God. It is time to realize that we need God more than he needs us. The time has come to turn to God and reassert our trust in him for the healing of America."
Yeah. Our nation needs a lot of prayers.
Yes.
Mark, best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming to Dale Carter's America.
My pleasure.
Yeah.